Welcome back to the show. On today's episode, it is Gabe, Giannis, and I joined with Matt Chan. Now, Matt Chan and I first met in 2009 at the CrossFit Games. He's a former CrossFit Games competitor, current fighter, husband, and just total badass. We always love talking to Matt Chan. We actually did an episode with him, I don't know, a couple of months ago, Gabe, right? Was it a couple months ago? Yeah. Where we dove into relationships. We dove into a bunch of that type of stuff. Today, we talk about his training for the tactical games. We talk about training in general. I love talking to Matt Chan. He always brings good perspective that I appreciate, especially on the training side.
I think that today was the day that I found out that Matt Chan is 46. And if I look like that at 46, I will be so happy. So whatever supplements he's taking, I'm definitely going to look into. No, but I love this conversation. I love that we had Matt Chan back on. You know, we left off that last episode, which people should definitely go check out, with his take on CrossFit, which obviously both of you guys come, and how it's maybe an incomplete training program. So we dive into that a little bit more. I thought that was a super interesting conversation about training, but I just love talking to the guy, man. It was a really fun one, and I'm sure people like the episode. Absolutely.
Well, as per usual, leave us a rating, leave us a review, share this episode with your friends, especially, you know, if you get, there's a ton of value to unpack here, but I'm particular, like when he spit off all the different peptides and the way that he talked about high intensity, I really got a lot out of that. I thought it kind of opened my mind in terms of CrossFit and the methodology itself. So without any further ado, let's dive into a great episode with Matt Chan. I think a great testament to who Matt Chan is that we jump on the podcast, and on the screen is Gabe, myself, and Liz, who helps us produce the show and also works, for the company. And first thing Matt says is, "Hi, I don't know if we know each other. My name's Matt." I thought that was super polite, dude. I really appreciate it, and I apologize for not jumping in and introducing you first. So that's the kind of guy you are, though, Matt.
Thanks. Hey, where are we in life? Like, I'm ready to meet new people and remember names now. Whereas like back in the day when we were doing seminars, it was like, holy cow, if I can remember 3 of these people's names by the end of this weekend, it's a win.
Dude, so you want to know what's interesting? We were talking to Dennis Marshall the other day, right, Gabe? Dennis Marshall. And I didn't realize he has been teaching seminars for CrossFit since 2008. He's still teaching seminars for CrossFit. That's crazy.
It is crazy. You know, I mean, but here's the thing about that stuff. A lot of the guys that we used to work with that still do that, you know, they're masters of their trade. Even though those things have probably shrunk in size, like I bet they're delivering a product that's way better than what we were delivering back in the day. Maybe not the same entertainment level, but, you know, definitely, probably stick to the script and hit timelines better than we did.
Dude, in the early days of CrossFit, when we would go teach seminars, it was like, it was very structured, and we did, the Flow Masters always did a good job. But I know that in the early days, I was definitely used as a demo of intensity more times than they would probably incorporate today. You know, like during workouts and different stuff, like the participants, they would show intensity from some of the instructors. But in either case, that was a hell of a time. But welcome back to the show, man. Gabe, where do we end off last show? Because I know you and I were like, bro, we got to get him back on and talk about the major question we asked, right?
Well, I think it's also like our first repeat guest on the Jason Khalipa podcast. So that's pretty special.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. It's cool having you back on. Where we left off at, it was really interesting because Jason likes asking this question to all our guests. And it's, you know, what's something that, you know, over the past 5 years, you've changed your mind on, right? And it took you a little while to come up with your answer, but then it was, and what you said was that CrossFit is not a complete program. And I think we wanted to dive into that, at least to start a little bit more. There's a whole bunch of other things that I think we didn't touch on. I know you just competed in the tactical games. I know psychedelics is something that we kind of touched on last time that I think we can definitely dive deep into a little bit more. But just from a training perspective, what did you mean by that? And how has your training kind of evolved since, you know, being so deep in that game?
Well, I'll just say from, anybody that's been to a level one, one of the things that they really impress upon you as you leave for the weekend is that CrossFit is constantly varied functional movements, high intensity. And that high intensity component is what makes the program unique, correct? So with that, there's a lot of definitions that talks about what is intensity, how to balance technique and intensity. So it is a large component, not only of the level one seminar, but also of the methodology itself. And that's not lost on me. And I do think it is a shortcut to results in certain areas. Where I think we, as I've grown older and have had to deal with the outcome of over, I think I'm at like 17 years now of doing CrossFit style workouts, or CrossFit only for a long period of time, is that it takes a toll on your body if you are doing that 6 days a week or 5 days a week. And what I've come to appreciate more is one of the things that they state in the level one, which they said, hey, if we find a program that is better, and the example that was always used when I was, on staff was, if it means balancing on a Bosu ball and doing hula hoops while shaking a shake weight, and that shit works, and it proves in the CrossFit Games that it produces better athletes, we'll adopt that, and you'll see it in the daily WOD. You'll see it in the, the CrossFit.com programming. And unfortunately, I don't think that they ever really implemented that. Jason, you agree?
Yeah, I think in theory. So I agree with you. And we used to always use who is the fittest man on earth? The guy who set like the triathlon. Remember the great?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
It'll come to me. But we used him as an analogy, right? Where he had great skills, these long, slow distance training, but lacked it over here. And but I generally agree with you. I mean, I think that was always the premise that Greg had and that CrossFit had, was that, hey, show us a more effective program and we will adopt it. That was always the premise. But to your point, I don't know if that's been incorporated as much. I don't think from a methodology perspective, things have changed much in the last, 20 years. Exactly
what my point is. So if you look back, starting I would say in about 2012 to 2013, I think 2013 specifically, I think we learned a lot about program design specifically for CrossFit athletes that improved performance and outcome at the end of the CrossFit Games that was never adopted. And the big example of one of those elements is endurance training, and specifically, the stuff that you learned and I learned from Chris Hinshaw in 2013, that, dude, I mean, when I saw the improvements that you were getting, not only in running, but in the stuff that you, Miranda, Neil Maddox, Garrett were all doing, and you in particular, you and Garrett, your improvements over everyone else was at a rate of return that was unmatched by any other competitor. So when I saw that, I reached out to you and I was like, all right, so how is this happening? Because I can see this from afar that you were improving faster than everyone else. And you introduced me to Chris. And for the next bunch of years, I trained with Chris's program, which is submaximal aerobic conditioning, that created this base that not only allowed you to perform better in aerobic events or training sessions, but also it allowed you to be better in strength workouts after another workout, or it allowed you to recover better in shorter periods of time. It improved your oxygen uptake in your muscle tissues for longer CrossFit conditioning workouts. And I think that from what I've observed, that goes against high intensity. How we define high intensity, where it's like, and the argument could be made, well, the most programmed workout on CrossFit.com is the 5K run, right? But what is the goal of intensity? It's to decrease the time to completion in order to increase intensity or increase power output. And what that drives every athlete to do in an affiliate setting or in a training setting, and you guys see the same athletes day in and day out doing the same stuff that I do, which is they push that to their maximum to get that intensity. And what happens is, and this happened to me in those early years of training with Chris, was I would push well beyond my aerobic threshold, well beyond my lactate threshold, and turn this into like what would be like a zone 4 workout, which is missing the intention of creating aerobic base. Now, making full circle, Jason, I think you got second place in 2013.
I did. Yeah.
Rich Froning, another guy that, I mean, obviously won 2013, that trained with Chris. Camille, another person that trained with Chris, took first place.
Yeah. Garrett, I think, took fifth that year, I think.
Right. So you could just go person to person to person. And if you look at the podium of the last 10 years of the CrossFit Games, there's one common element that those people have that I don't see with the other athletes. Can the other athletes still end up on the podium? Absolutely, programming dependent. But in reality, these athletes that have these huge metabolic engines, specifically in anaerobic capacities, they do really, really well for a lot of the events, but then they bomb so many that they cannot be on that podium. So that had me thinking for a long time, like, okay, cool. So this aerobic training is so important to ending up with a better performance in the CrossFit Games. What will it do with the average person that thinks that CrossFit.com should just be mixed modality, high intensity training and Olympic weightlifting and powerlifting style movements, and they're leaving out that stuff? And inevitably, and I will speak for myself personally because I am not as educated as somebody like Peter Attia or Huberman. I am a guy that swings a Halligan at work and likes playing with barbells. When I started addressing, no, let me go back. Let me back it up. Training with my definition and CrossFit's definition of CrossFit created an aerobic deficiency that I could not overcome. So it became wholly obvious to me when I participated in an endurance event and I went beyond my aerobic threshold for a long period of time. And then my body just said, click into that anaerobic area that you're good at. So I would have to go and then stop, go and then stop, go and then stop until I could recover. And it was this huge hole in my fitness that I never realized was there because CrossFit programming doesn't expose it.
Dude.
Is some of the hesitation of making this or revisiting the model the fact that you can't fit this into like a 60-minute class?
Absolutely.
Is that kind of a part of it? Is that it?
It's off brand. You can't fit it in the affiliate setting. It may require you to go out to a track. I mean, there's so many reasons why you can't implement it in your standard box. I understand that part of it, but I think people need to be aware of the consequences of training anaerobically only, or for 90% of what you do, and that needs that understanding of like, okay, if I train like this for a long period of time, my body is going to bias creating energy through anaerobic glycolysis. And what that means is when you train that longer and longer, your body becomes more efficient at that and it loses capacity in aerobic activities. And you just need to match that up with your priorities. So to me, I started thinking, okay, where do I want to be at the end of my career? Do I want to be doing CrossFit in a gym? Or do I want to be going on, these long adventures with my wife, Cherie, or friends? Do I want to go on these long hunts with a heavy pack and be able to sustain that for a long period of time? And when I match that up, the CrossFit's definition that includes high intensity, which means power output, does not match up with my priorities. So I've had to add in 2 to 3 days a week of aerobic training specifically. And I think that's where, in my eyes, those two things don't match up. Does that mean that I don't understand why they do it? No, I get it. Their brand is high intensity, and it's a very effective brand, and it does create very high levels of fitness. It's not the whole fitness that we preach that it was.
Yeah.
Matt, what does that look like for you right now? What are those 2-3 days a week look like? And then how are you rounding out the rest of your training on a typical week?
Well, specifically right now, because I'm kind of prepping for 3 different mountain bike races starting in June. I am riding on a bike trainer, minimum 3, usually 4 days per week. And the shortest time frame is 1 hour, and the longest time frame is 2 hours. And that makes up the majority of it. But when I'm not training for something specific like that, it's generally one running session that would look a lot like what Jason and I did forever with Chris. So 30 minutes of running, work hard, then work less hard. And most of it's kind of flirting with your lactate threshold and then dipping down into your aerobic threshold. And then I love programming what I would call zone 2 mixed modality stuff. And the way that that might look is you take a cardio exercise, which is 3 minutes. You do that for 3 minutes at a low pace, limited by heart rate threshold, because it's the easiest thing to monitor in a garage gym program. And then you take 2 minutes doing another exercise. I'm sorry, 2 exercises. So 1 minute and 1 minute of 2 extra exercises. But those 2 exercises do not elevate the heart rate. For example, it might be planks or some variation of a plank where it's a isometric hold. It may be a squat hold or a goblet squat hold for a minute. And you do 3 rounds of that, rest a minute, switch that 2 more times. And that ends up being about a 46-minute workout. And it's great because it holds your attention. It's not super challenging where you feel at the end of it blown up. You feel actually well recovered, but also you're sweating. You got a good workout in, and you moved consistently for 45 to 50 minutes.
Yeah, almost an hour. I wrote down some notes here. First off, I want to talk about what bike race you're doing. But aside from that, I want to go back to this. We finished off last podcast asking what has Matt changed his mind about in the last 5-10 years? And to just going full circle, you said that CrossFit was an incomplete program. And the way you described it now, what I'm gathering from it has really hit home for me as of recently with what Gabe is interested in. So Gabe is studying Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's studying old school bodybuilding. And he's actually he has a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger on his wall somewhere. But anyways, look, watch. He's gonna pull out the book. There it is. There it is. And
awesome.
So Gabe is really interested, and he programs our Flex Track, which is more like a functional bodybuilding. And I've been doing a little bit more of that as well. And what's been really unique for me incorporating into the flex training, and it kind of goes exactly what you're talking about, is that the goal of our flex training is like connecting the brain with the body, isolating a specific movement pattern or muscle group, and really trying to winning is like isolation, pump, and like expressing the movement at its full potential. That's winning. Versus winning, which is like in CrossFit idea, it's like work capacity. It's moving as fast as you can. And it's been difficult for me to go back and forth. So this morning I was doing some bodybuilding, and I want to start, kind of kipping. I want to do all those things because I'm used to just get it done as fast as possible. And I think what you're bringing up is that when you add in this layer of constantly varied functional movements at a high intensity, I believe, gives phenomenal results to most people. Most of the time, it's the quickest way to get great. But I appreciate your expression of it where you're saying, hey, it can't always be that way. Otherwise it's incomplete in this theory. It's kind of like saying, for me, because I never exposed myself to this isolation of bodybuilding, I haven't been able to express that as well because it's not a full complete package is I guess the point I'm trying to make from a bodybuilding perspective. Same thing with the aerobic side. So I appreciate that take, man. I actually agree with you. I thought that was pretty I hadn't looked at it the way you just said it. Obviously Chris Hinshaw came in and really changed the game for me. And for the record, good, bad, or indifferent, I always was under the premise that I would introduce him to anybody, and anybody who asked me, I would introduce him to. And was that good for me long term? I don't know, but it was good for the sport. So I always introduced him to people. But maybe Rich beat me that year because of the intro. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and he's worked with, like I said, the champions, right? He's worked with Camille,
Frazier.
He's worked with you, he's worked with Rich, he's Frazier, Jeff Adler. Like it's just a list of who's who. So like, I don't think there's any denying that that's what's missing out of most of their programs. And you guys can picture any number of athletes that are gonna crush the barbell workouts where it's like the ladders. That's super exciting. And I understand why people get so hyped up about that stuff, because fucking running is boring as hell.
Right.
Like you're running around in a circle or running around on a assault runner. It's not sexy. And unfortunately, it's probably the thing that most people need the most. In order to improve, but also like Jay, I really want to like drive home that thing where it's like match up what you want your life to look like and what you want to be capable of with what your exercise program is, because most of the people that are in exercise are in it for a specific reason, and it could be something like what you're saying is, hey, I want to take off my shirt and not be ashamed when I go to the pool, right? That's a big thing for a lot of people. And if that's the case, adding in 20 minutes of functional bodybuilding or, Arnold's program or some sort of isolation exercise, like where you connect your muscle tissue with the movement and get that big pump, you can do that without beating up your body with a second fucking CrossFit workout. But what people do is they say, all right, well, if that's effective, I just need more of it. And frankly, I think what ends up happening is you end up in this negative feedback loop where, okay, if I do more of this, I'm going to lose a little bit of weight and I'm going to put on some muscle. But in reality, you end up overtrained and there's this high demand for carbs in your body because it's all anaerobic glycolysis that makes you put on body weight. So like, it's a tender balance. And the thing that I think works the best is CrossFit is very effective. You and I know this. Daily accessory work, very, very, very effective at increasing volume without beating up the body. And then 2 to 3 days of aerobic work per week and match that up with your goals.
Dude,
it's funny how so much of this just comes with age, in that as you're more susceptible to feeling beat up, you kind of have to find these things on your own. I would have heard all this. Like I would have listened to this podcast as a 20-year-old and I would have been like, yeah, that all makes sense, but it doesn't really apply to me. Right. Like so much of this, just like with age, with a couple of injuries, people kind of have to get there on their own a little bit, which is unfortunate because I wish that, before I hurt my back really bad, I had like heard this and been like, yeah, that makes total sense. But dude, I hook, line, and sinker believe that if this much volume is giving me this much results, obviously 2x volume will give me 2x the rate of results. Like obviously there was no doubt in my mind that was the case. Yeah. But yeah, it's like many things with fitness and nutrition. I think people have to kind of get to that on their own, however that looks like. Although I wish we could just kind of like, it's so important,
Yeah. I think you brought up a really good point though. I just want to make sure we like circle this, that like it is goal dependent, and your goals, I wouldn't say they're like dramatically different than mine, Matt. Like we have very similar goals. I think you do a more backcountry type stuff than obviously I do, but like you want to be able to express your fitness for long time domains regularly for the rest of your life. Like that's, if I'm like summarizing your goals, like for me, my goals are a little bit more anaerobic in terms of like, I want to look the part, I want to act the part, I want to be able to keep up with my kids, but I also want to be able to express it at those longer ranges, but just maybe not as much of a priority. So my training is probably a little bit more skewed this way. Like we're talking 20%, and yours might be 20% this way. But I think the key there is like aligning your expectations and where you want to go with the training style that you're going to be implementing, and then adjusting it for seasons in your life.
All right, guys, we're taking a break from the podcast to talk to you about the most exciting thing that we've launched at Train Hard in a while, and that is the Train, Protect, Provide collection that is now live on the Train Hard shop. If you've been listening to the podcast or reading our emails, you've heard us talk about these three words: train, protect, provide. These are the three pillars that are at the foundation of everything we're trying to do here at Train Hard. Train, pretty self-explanatory. We train hard to be prepared for anything life is going to throw our way. Protect, it's not about going out there and looking for trouble. It's just about being ready in the case that trouble finds us. And then provide, which is probably the most meaningful one for me, isn't just about putting food on the table. It's not just about providing financially, but it's about being there and being present and being this force of stability for your family at all times and providing anything that they need at any time. And that's something that I aspire to do every single day as a dad and a husband. And I know it's something that's super important to Jay as well. So we're super excited to now have Train, Protect, Provide on some awesome apparel. The team took so much time to pick out some t-shirts, some crew necks, and some hoodies that are a little different than what we've done in the past, but are different in a really good way in that they are so comfortable and super versatile that you can work out in them or you can wear them out and they are going to look great. So go to the shop right now, the Train Hard shop, check out the Train, Protect, Provide collection. And since you're listening to this on the podcast, use code podcast and that'll get you free shipping. So head over to the shop, check it out, but let's get back to the show.
You just got done competing in the tactical games. I would love to hear how you're training. So I was training, full disclosure, I was training, and we talked about this a lot on the podcast. I was training pretty diligently for tactical games. I was spending most of my time shooting because I thought that was my weaker area. And I got much better, of course, but I wasn't, obviously SWAT caliber. But then, I had some family stuff come up, so I had to delay that. And so I'm going to be competing in September. But I'm wondering, how was your experience? Because you and I connected about this. Obviously, it's a shit ton of gear. But aside from the gear, how was your experience with tactical games? Because they're putting out more content. It's great. But I still don't know exactly how it goes down.
Let me first start by saying, I was lucky enough. So I reached out to Jacob Hepner. I've been watching the tactical games, I think now for maybe a year and a half, 18 months, stuff on YouTube, like you said, their Instagram content, which is amazing. And I've always been interested in firearms and shooting sports. And obviously with the hunting stuff, I do plenty of shooting with bolt action rifles. I own a couple handguns. But this last year I was just like, you know what, I'm going to take it in stride. I'm going to reach out to Jacob Hepner and I'm going to see if this is something that I can do both financially and physically. And reached out to him and he's like, how that guy is. He's so passionate. He just starts throwing information at you and it's just like, holy shit. I need voice notes going because I'm not absorbing any of this.
Did you see his Instagram this morning? When you get a chance, go look at his Instagram. He's on his baby moon and he's drinking a virgin pina colada. And he's talking about how the quarterfinal scores are kind of whack. And he's like, I'll bet my virgin pina colada on this. And it's just go watch it. It's great. Anyways.
Yeah, he's intense. So he passed me off to this. He basically, he's like, hey, I'm gonna connect you with my friend Nick. Boom, that was it. Got off the phone. I didn't know who Nick was. Nick reaches out. He says, hey, I'm looking for a partner for the Texas San Antonio event in April. Do you want to do it? I was just like, I don't even know who this is. I don't know. And he's like, my name's Nick Thayer. I own the tactical games.
Yeah, I run it. Yeah, it's
yeah. I'm in. So luckily enough, I had probably the best guide through my first event that you could possibly have, and he was so busy the entire time. Just imagine running an event and also participating in it. It's just, I barely saw him, but every time an event was coming up, he would describe it to me. He would make sure that all my stuff was correct. And we did 8 events by the end of the weekend, and every one of them was so much fun. some of them were physically hard, some of them were shooting only, and some of them were exercise only, fitness stuff. So there was a good mix of everything. And the thing that I walked away being more confident with is the community is so supportive of your success in your own capacity that they're not trying to hold information from you like maybe we were back in the day as competitors. They will say, hey dude, you should take that off and put it over here because that's just going to get in the way for this event. You need to get rid of that. Or do you need a couple higher capacity magazines because I can see you only have a 10 round capacity. I'll go see if I can find you one. And it's just like, dude, these guys are awesome. Like, I'm trying to beat them and they're like trying to give me tips and everything. So by the end of the weekend, man, I was very tired. But what I walked away with was, this was kind of like CrossFit events circa 2009 and everybody's there for fun. The level of competition is, even though it's high in the moment, it's generally supportive, and people will go out of their way to make sure that you're having a good time and also a successful weekend for where you're at. So the YO Ranch is another thing I should mention. The YO Ranch, which is where it was held, was amazing. It was like an African zoo. I mean, it was insane. We're running around on a ruck. We were the 5.2 run with a rucksack. And we ran by zebras. I mean, it's just the whole time. It's like, what in the hell is happening here?
And you had to dude, I love that, man. I cannot wait to compete. I talked to Nick actually the other day. I'm supposed to be competing in September. So I'll let you know. But that's really, I'm really happy to hear you had a great experience. I cannot wait to do mine.
Yeah, I think the most fun event was the one I probably did the worst in, which was a 2-gun stage where you start with you and your partner sitting in a Humvee side by side, and they have that little shot timer. And as soon as the shot timer beeps, partner 1 hops out, 4 paper targets, and then 4 steel targets. Each of the paper targets, you have to hit them twice. Each of the steel targets, you have to hit once. You run to the back of the Humvee, tap the back of it, and your partner hops out and repeats the same thing on the other side. And then you sprint over and you do a series of long range shots. And the whole event ended in 180 seconds. So it was just like organized chaos and with firearms. I mean, it's incredible, really. Yeah.
So did you have 12 rounds in one magazine and then you changed out your magazine? You put another magazine in?
Well, that's another thing I learned. So I live in Colorado, like you live in California, and I only had 10 round mags, and nobody around had a Smith & Wesson magazine that I could borrow. So I ended up having to change mags, which slowed our time down and all that stuff. So many learning experiences regarding the firearms themselves. But all in all, I'm a beginner. I'm a beginner at tactical shooting. I'm a beginner with an AR-15 platform rifle. And it went so well. I couldn't be happier.
Did it go so well? I mean, obviously it was a great experience. You had a really good time. Did you have any goal going into it in terms of like placing an end result, even though it was your first time?
Gabe, not really, because it was just like one of those things where because there was a fitness element. I really wanted to excel at that stuff. But the problem with that is like, okay, so what? You excel at the fitness thing, but then you blow yourself out for shooting, and you can't hold your sight still over the target. And that happened to me a couple different times where it's just like you're trying to breathe and recover, but you're also trying to shoot at 100 yards, and all you see is your sight going like this, and it's just like, come on, land on it. It's like, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna hold my breath here for 10 seconds. So it was really fun. It's definitely a learning experience, and I'd actually like to go again as an individual now that I have a grasp on how the event runs itself. And honestly, I've accepted the fact that I'm not an elite level fitnesser anymore. I'm kind of in the middle of the road. I like that. So I'm thinking about maybe doing the master's level. I'm 46 years old. That puts me dead center in the 40 to 50 age group. And I think that might be a good place for me for the next event.
Dude, well, I'll reach out to you offline and we'll see about September, because I was talking to, it's in Utah, I believe.
Yeah.
What event, you and I definitely have this in common. I think, like, I love having things that I'm striving for, and obviously I love grappling. I love jiu-jitsu. But the tactical game has been really fun. It's been a little hard, only because, I've been dry firing a lot, but it's hard because you have to make time for the range, and especially rifle ranges around here, like getting out to a couple hundred yards is tough. I got to go to Dave Castro's ranch. But I had a question for you on two things. Are you looking at the Total Archery Challenge, number one, and number two, how long of mountain bike rides are you getting ready for? Because I may or may not be interested in doing that with you, depending on where it's at, what it is, and that. Yeah.
Yeah. So start with the mountain bike thing. Like, the first event that I'm doing this year is in June. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time, called the Bailey Hundo, and it's a 100K mountain bike race. It doesn't have a ton of elevation gain. It's like, if I remember right, I think it's like 6,000 to 8,000 feet of elevation gain across those 60-ish miles. But 60 miles and the area, I'm familiar with the area. So it's a good kind of entry point for mountain bike racing for me this year. And I've been riding since November to kind of prep for that one. But the overall goal is I'm on Team Mayhem for the Leadville this year.
Or the Leadville 100 or whatever it is? Leadville.
Yeah. Yep. Leadville 100.
Oh, yeah, because you helped Rich with that last year, right?
Yeah. So this will be my second time doing it. I was in his pit crew last year at one of the aid stations, Sheree and I were, and it just fired me up to see him do so well. And he asked if I wanted to do this one on his charity team. So raise the money to enter into the charity team. And that one is, I think, August 7th. So that's the overall goal this year, is to be prepared for a better finish than my first finish in the Leadville 100. And that's got 12,000, if I remember right, I think it's 12,000 feet of climbing. So basically double what this first one is. And
you're a pretty high elevation
the
whole time, right?
Yeah. So it only dips under 10,000 feet for like a half mile. Yeah. So it's a very high in elevation event. The highest point, I think, is 12,200 or 12,700, one of the two. And, you're sucking thin air. It's, I mean, whether you're from Colorado or whether you're from Cookeville, it's the altitude gets everybody.
I wanted to ask you, so, last time we had you on, we talked a lot about relationships with Cherie and talking to at the firehouse and balancing that relationship, which I really enjoyed. I have a question on training, and because we're on this kind of, we're on this journey, might as well finish it out with this concept. What supplements are you currently taking? Because yesterday we had a buddy of ours, I think JP, Jarrett Perelmutter.
Mm-hmm.
JP, remember the former owner of Brick? And dude, he lifted up this bag of, dude, I cannot describe to you how many supplements he had in this bag. And so I'm curious, what type of supplements, if any, are you taking right now? And what have you found useful? Because while we're on this show, Gabe will probably Amazon and order them to his house, depending on what it is.
Yeah. I could go in the drawer and figure it out, but the big ones are the staples that I think most people are quite aware of. So vitamin D, I take 10,000 IU of vitamin D every day. 5 grams of EPA and DHA fish oil. That's been, for those two, those have been years upon years of taking that. Magnesium, I take a lot of magnesium malate every day. Helps with cramping, makes me sleep better. CoQ10, all the stuff that, for me, is longevity based. I take a bunch of that stuff. Because I'm a little beat up, especially, after this event that I just did down in Texas, I take a couple peptides. So I take BPC 157 at a recommended dosage that you can find online. I take something called melanotan 2 and I have very low melanin secretion. So like if I'm out in the sun for too long, I get burned up, all my skin flakes off, and then I get burned up again the next day. That one helps me for this summertime stuff, be out in the sun without ending up with melanoma, basically. So I take that a couple times a week. And then I go on again, off again with a couple other peptides that help with healing. So like I have pretty damaged meniscus that I go in and I do stem cells and platelets for regularly. And I take one called TB500 that helps with wound healing. So when I get those platelets injected into my knee, the TB500 helps utilize that stuff better. And I see better results in those injections. So the combination of BPC and TB500 have been amazing for me. And then I take a few herbal testosterone support supplements that, you know, guys like Huberman have talked about, that help me, you know, put off the timeline on which, you know, TRT is likely for me. And I get my blood tested every 6 months to just kind of see where it's at, and they are effective. But you know, it ends up being a lot. Like, I mean, we probably spend $200 to $300 a month on just me for supplements.
It's so funny. It was a lot of the same things that JP had, and JP really wanted to talk about peptides. We just ran out of time. I don't know.
Can you talk? Yeah. Can you talk? I don't know anything about peptides. Like I just wrote down TB500 and I had heard the other one. What was that? 157 or something like that?
Yeah. BPC 157. Yeah. I've been taking that since probably like 2017, I think. And what that really does is, well, I'll tell you what I experience. When I'm using BPC 57, usually I start taking it because my back is flared up, my knee is flared up. You know, and what that experience is like for me is like I have tenderness stepping on my right leg. So if I get off the rig at work, I will get sharp pains that make my knee buckle. My back then becomes affected. So like, it's just like you know, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And BPC for me helps reduce some of that sensitivity. And I'm sure it has something to do with reducing inflammation and also healing any micro wounds, if you will. So peptides are, if I understand this right, they are just unnatural sequences of protein structures that scientists have figured out that when you put the protein structures together in this sequence, it will elicit a response from the body. And some of those things are, like I said, higher melanin secretion into your bloodstream, which then makes you tanner. Or, you know, there's even what they call secretagogues, which cause your body to secrete more of your own growth hormone, and growth hormone like, you know, hormones. And all of those things, like, to me, I'm not competing really in anything. I'm not competitive. Let's put it that way. And if somebody wants to say that I'm cheating at the tactical games because I take BPC 157, I guess that I got to stop competing at the tactical games because, you know, it makes me feel better and I'm still performing poorly. So like, what the fuck, you know? But yeah, you know, you talk to people, you listen to podcasts, you ask questions of doctors, and, you know, find out if the things are right for you. I mean, the places that you can get a lot of this stuff, they say it's for laboratory use or animal use only. And I shoot that shit in my body. I have no idea what the long-term outcome is going to be. I could end up with like a cattail. I don't know. So,
Merrick Health has been what I used to get blood work done regularly from a company called Merrick Health, and they would provide peptides. Gabe, you've never messed around with peptides, right?
No, I haven't gone down that rabbit hole just yet, but I'm sure I will.
Yeah.
So you inject the peptides, and
yep.
Okay, all right. TB500. Yeah.
You know, this is interesting. So I am on a very, you know, I would call it strict diet right now. I'm using RP to help lose body mass for the Leadville. So I'm trying to increase my wattage per kilograms, which is a measure that cyclists use of power output, basically, and what your potential is. And because when I started in November, I was 230 pounds, I had a lot of muscle tissue and also carrying extra fat. I needed to start shedding both in order to be as productive as possible during this bike race. So I started sticking to a diet, and it was working pretty well, but it was fluctuating up and down. And I found that basically, my hunger, I just couldn't get my hunger to subside. So these longer bike rides, they just made me hungry, and I would just fucking eat and eat and eat and just put all the weight back on. So I actually started taking a peptide called semaglutide or semaglutide, which is Ozempic.
Oh, yeah.
So that's new to me, and I don't plan on doing that for very long.
I didn't know that was a peptide.
It is. It's a peptide.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
There's another one, whatever the other brand name is. It's like
Wegovy?
I'm going to butcher it. Yeah, maybe that's it. Wegovy. Yeah, I think that is it.
Mm-hmm.
That one's called tirzepatide, which is the generic peptide name for that one. So there's multiple options out there for people to try, Ozempic without a prescription from the doctor. But I will say this, I do not recommend that. Let's clear train hard out of this.
Yeah.
Don't do this. This is not a good idea.
This is not medical advice. So your goal there is obviously you're putting in a lot of hours training for this very specific event, and you want to reduce, essentially you want to get your body weight down and your rotation, your cycle rotation and power into the pedal as high as possible. And this peptide or Ozempic helps with you not feel as hungry, so that you don't finish a race and then eat, 6 bowls of cereal or whatever.
Exactly. And that's the problem I was having was I'm sitting there after these 2-hour long rides on the trainer, and I'm just stuffing my face with carbs. And yes, it made me feel better and my performance was good the next day, but my body weight wasn't budging. And you can't be a 230 pound man on a tiny little 26 pound bicycle and expect to, do that well. So, again, is it cheating? I have no idea. And if anyone cares, then I'm sorry. My bad. I promise I'll be in the lower 10% of the entire event. This is all for my own, playing around with it, trying to figure it out.
Matt, since you're keeping such close track of your blood work and stuff, have you noticed or had any problem with hormones, just given the fact that losing weight, big stressor, all this training, big stressor, all of that stuff kind of going on? Is that something you're at all kind of concerned about or looking at, or is everything still looking pretty good?
Well, back in the day, 2017, when I started seeing kind of the doctor that you were seeing, Jason, where you said they drew blood and then they also recommended peptides. That's how I was introduced to that stuff. This naturopath doctor was here's what your blood work looks like. And it was a very inclusive panel that included over 50 blood markers. And they were your testosterone is extremely low for your age. I think I was at 305 and for a total. And your cortisol levels are extremely high. And I don't remember what those numbers were. And they started asking questions. These are people who were not familiar with CrossFit or CrossFit methodology stuff. And they started asking questions about how I train. And I would tell them, all right, look, most days I'll go into the garage gym and I'll do a little bit of weightlifting, back then it was clean and jerk and snatch followed by some squats or pulls and stuff like that. And then later on in the day, I would do a little bit of conditioning, maybe mess around with some skill work here and there. And the conditioning was generally very, very, very high intensity where you're maximizing your athletic potential anaerobically. And what they said was basically if you continue to do this, your testosterone will continue to go down and your cortisol will continue to go up. Those things are correlated. And You need to look at how you're training to maximize your potential. You need to, basically what they were saying was you need to train smarter, not harder. And I reduced the training volume of high intensity stuff starting then. And ever since then, it's just been going up and up and up and up and up. And it's kind of plateaued now that I'm around, 46 years old. It's kind of plateaued in that like mid 500s to 600 range, depending on the day. And my cortisol has gone down despite my job being more demanding. So obviously there's some correlation there. And I think monitoring your blood work, again, with your exercise program can tell you a lot about the effectiveness of your program.
It's so interesting, man, because someone would have looked at you back then from a performance perspective, like aesthetic perspective, and they would be like, hey, man, like this is the pinnacle of health, right? But it's so interesting what could be going on under the hood when you actually look at it. And like,
yep,
in this kind of a world that I've been like fully immersed in. And like, when you also look at like competitive bodybuilders, for example, there's a lot of like really young guys, man, that are doing like completely irreversible, like effects on their sex hormones by getting super lean and working as hard as they are. And yeah, you don't realize that. You don't realize that when you see, the average person that might look really fit on social media or whatever, but really know what's kind of going on. So yeah.
Oh, dude. And that's a great point. Like if you follow social media and think that picture that's being painted for most people is achievable without drugs, I'll be honest with you. And I don't take off my shirt in most pictures because, I'm a little fluffy all the time. And,
there's no filter for that or what, Chan?
Yeah. The only time you see me without a shirt on like our YouTube channel is because like, hey, this diet's really working right now. So let's strip it off all we can. But, you see individuals on that thing that are super jacked all the time, and they're painting an unrealistic picture for people to try to achieve. That is achieved, yes, through hard work, without a doubt. Like even if you take drugs, you got to fucking work hard to look like that. You have to watch your diets very closely. But if someone were to just say do RP, just because it's the platform that I use right now for dieting, they tell you in that app, only do this for 12 weeks and then go on to a maintenance phase. And yes, your maintenance phase is you're going to put on weight. Okay. But like most of us look at something like that, we're like, no, I want to start another diet because I'm happy with the results I've gotten. And you end up fucking up your hormones. You end up fucking up your body, your metabolism. You can't go low fat for that long without negatively impacting your fucking hormones. So when you see these pictures,
Mike from RP, right? Do you ever talk to him? Is it Mike?
No, actually, I just pay for the app. Shaw, right? Mike Shaw, is that his name?
I'm pretty sure. I'll have to double check. Yeah, I'm pretty sure because. Okay. Anyways, distracted, but yes, RP. I think you bring up a good point, and sorry, that's my ADD kicking in.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, like honestly, the point I was trying to make is like I'd love to say that like I can take off my shirt any day of the week and feel like super jazzed about my body composition, but in reality, like it's just not realistic. And the way you train can negatively impact that. The way you eat can negatively impact that. And if you stretch that shit out too long, it can be long term. And again, when you exercise only anaerobically, there's a huge demand for carbs, and then that many carbs in a long-term basis. Like you hear these guys that are training and they're eating 800 grams of carbs per day. Dude, there's some fucking negative consequences to doing that stuff on your health. Like, is that healthy for you in the long term? I guess it's yet to be seen, but I would guess probably not.
Yeah, all those insulin spikes and kind of having to deal with it with exercise and stuff. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I forgot who said something about it the other day, but they brought up exactly that, just how long aerobic efforts will actually have like a dampening effect on diet compared to like these short bursts of like high intensity stuff that just make you like ravishly hungry afterwards. So I experienced that for sure.
Dude. I experienced that yesterday. I was
Jay, do you ever go long and slow?
So yesterday,
You're not a long and slow type of guy.
well, okay. So, okay. All right. Yesterday, I rucked in the morning for 30 minutes.
Oh.
So that's not that long. But I wanted to like listen to a podcast before I was getting on a call. So I rucked for 30 minutes. I was like really steep. That was fun. Then I took my bike for 40 minutes. I rode my bike to the gym, which is 40 minutes. I took class, which was an hour. And then I rode back. I didn't quite make it home, and I had to jump on a call with Gabe and a few other people because it was windy. I blame it on the wind. It was just brutal on the way home. But anyways, that is, I guess, my long, slow distance training is that I like to cycle to the gym, and then I like to ride it back. And so typically,
dude, that's all it is. That's all it needs to be. Yeah. Like the thing about it is Jay, you and I have trained, and Gabe, all of us have trained with high intensity. And when you don't give that sort of effort, it feels like it's not enough. And in reality, it's more. It's more. You're doing more for your health doing that. And I think if we just make it okay for CrossFitters to learn from older CrossFitters and say, look, give yourself a pass, train hard for 1 to 2 days in a row, and then do a dedicated aerobic day, you will be healthier. You will be fitter. You will see better results in your program and how you feel on a daily basis because of it. It's okay.
Well, I would take it a step like for myself, and I would say, hey, you want to train hard forever? Like hard needs to be relative on the day that you're approaching it in terms of like something I'm terrible at. And Thomas DeLauer talked about this, is that using the heart rate as a guide is so key on like these jogs or rucks, because I know I'm the guy who wants to speed up the ruck, make everything harder. It's just like with the flex program. I always want to make it like, how do I add more weight, do it more? It's like, dude, no, like reduce the weight, do it right. When you're rucking, slow it down. And I think something I've been using lately is our heart rate monitor. I got this watch, like it's a G-Shock. Like I don't have a fancy Apple Watch, but it has my heart rate in there. And so I'm able to evaluate distance and then look at my heart rate. And it gives me like the zone that I'm currently in, which has been helpful for when I'm rucking or even cycling or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of that stuff is true. And I think the big takeaway for me out of that stuff has been, it's okay to give yourself a pass. Like just because the effort is submaximal, movement is magic, and like your joints are going to feel better. You're going to get an aerobic benefit out of it. You're going to burn a shit ton of stored fat as well as blood fat, and all of that stuff is going to make you healthier. And then when you come back after that session, your next high intensity day will feel more productive.
Yeah,
rather than just another beatdown.
I think those are wise words, and they also carry over to jiu-jitsu really well. In jiu-jitsu, it's the same thing. You got to have days where your RP is lower and your RP is higher, and you got to be able to adjust. And I think that for a complete program, especially depending on what your goals are, like having that long, slow distance, I think is key. Same thing in jiu-jitsu, right? You got to have some days where maybe you just flow rolling and you get a ton of benefit out of that. It's just hard when you've been ingrained for so long in like success is just like,
it's got to be hard.
It's got to be, and it's hard for me because, I'm still working on that.
Well, and you guys hear the same personalities, again, influencers, and see who people respect. And they're basically saying, don't be a fucking pussy all the time. Go harder, go do more, go do this, go do that. Hey, sleep in, guys. Fucking sleep in. Like, all that stuff is like, like I'd love to just tell everybody, go against the grain sometimes too, and just say, hey, don't wake up at 4:30. Wake up at fucking 9:30. Let your body recover. Don't feel bad about going on a 1 mile ruck walk. It doesn't have to be 20 miles in the sun where you're cooking yourself, every day. Like, I get it. That stuff is very motivational, and some people need that, but it's okay to give yourself a pass and just start with something.
Yeah.
I'm a huge morning guy. I love waking up in the morning, but I make sure to go to bed early, and I'm able to go to bed early to do that. But man, I love that. Like, so many people could benefit from a body composition standpoint, a hormonal health standpoint, from like skipping a workout or two and just literally sleeping in an extra hour and a half if they're not able to go to bed at the time where they're, getting a good amount of sleep and have, the ability to wake up super early.
Yeah. I think where that starts to obviously become a slippery slope is like, we are not encouraging laziness or complacency. We're just saying if your body needs something, do it. Like, like for example, this morning I got up early, I got after a workout, I'd rinsed myself off with the hose and I feel like $1,000,000, but that's what I wanted for that day. And I also, went to bed early. And so you just got to listen to your body. I think that's really important. I think that it comes with age, dude. Like, and I think I'm even going to evolve. Like I'm 38 right now, Matt, and you're 46, right? And I think even listening to the way you talk about training, like I'm going to be talking differently 8 years from now as well. And I think that's just important to note because people are at different stages in their kind of fitness journey and they find what works for them. Right now, what I'm doing is currently working for me, but 8 years from now, it might not, it might need to pivot more to a different style of training.
Yep. Totally agree.
That's it, man. Well, because this kind of like was I wanted to get into the psychedelics, but we could have to do that another time. Gabe, that we probably don't have time for psychedelics. Is there anything else in the last couple months since we had you on that you've changed your mind kind of on? Anything new that you're like, fuck, I didn't see it that way before? Anything come to mind? Tactical Games had to have done something for you because I'll tell you what, man, the first time that I was with Nick there and I thought that like my shooting was on point and he put me through this thing and I couldn't see through the scope and I just saw black because I was doing different angles. It got me so frustrated that like it changed my perspective on how easy it is to shoot a rifle long range. But how about you?
Yeah. All right. How about this? Going down to that competition was very humbling because there's a lot of great shooters. There's a lot of great exercisers. Like the combination of the two is where it really gets unique. And I would say that what's changed my mind is holding myself to this standard that I have to perform well at everything I do rather than just participate. And participating in this last event, I don't know if I let Nick down. We really haven't talked about it, but like, just participating in it was so much fun. And I have decided, that like afterwards, Sri and I talked, it's just like, I just want to participate in more events. And it does not even necessarily tactical games. I just want to do more events of things that I was afraid to try because I wouldn't perform well. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about doing that. And I think it's something that we're going to move on.
Man, that is so good. That is so good. And it's something that me and Jason both talk about, like not being really good at, which is like just not wanting to take that chance because like, it's going to be something I'm not going to be good at. I love that, man.
Dude.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because like you guys are, you're known for your fitness. So like you show up at a event, there's an expectation for you to perform. And I hold that in high regard that like, I still train hard every day and I don't want it to turn into this lame old man that comes out and kind of like, doesn't show up. But I've accepted the fact that I am where I'm at and it's the best that I can be right now with my job, with what I've got going on in life. And I'm not ashamed to take 15th out of 15 at something that I really enjoyed and tried. So
dude, well, and you're also the man in the arena, right? Like you're the man who's out there like doing the thing that other people aren't doing, and I had to kind of put myself in a similar mindset with jiu-jitsu because I showed up to Master Worlds one time and there was thousands of people and there was people there that knew me from CrossFit, whatever. And I had these expectations on myself. And at the time I was competing at purple belt and it was just, I don't know, it was just a really good, like I had to kind of like level set my expectations and be like, bro, this is a different sport, but I am the man in the arena. Like I'm the guy out there trying to get better, trying to expose myself to these new skills. And like, for that, I was grateful. And I think that you had a really good perspective on it. Yeah, it's got me, I want to go do a total archery challenge. I want to go do a tactical games. I want to go do all these different things. I just got to prioritize which ones to do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We didn't talk about the TAC. It is on the list, like to do one of those events. I don't find it as appealing as the firearms thing because like, don't get me wrong. I love shooting my bow and all that stuff, but like there's something about the firearms. It's just so exciting.
Dude.
It's like firecrackers. You're playing with firecrackers. I know that's not a good, responsible thing to say, but like, that's how I feel about it.
I'm never going shooting with Matt. No, I'm just kidding. I love it, man. Well, dude, I really appreciate you. Every time we talk, I don't know, man. It just puts me in a good mood. I feel like I could take on the day. I feel like your perspective is always unique. I'm going to go look up these peptides. I just don't know much about them. And I hope that if there's someone listening who wants to sponsor Matt Chan on his supplement, his supplement, save this guy a couple $100 help hook a brother up. I'll send a message to the guys over at Merrick Health. But aside from that, Gabe, any kind of closing remarks here?
No, man. Appreciate you having me back on. And I'd love to hear how the Leadville goes. That's such a cool race. I used to be really big into cycling. I remember watching the why am I blanking on his name? The Lance Armstrong documentary on him doing it. And,
Race Across the Sky.
Race. Oh, dude, cool. So cool that you're doing it. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you everybody for listening this long. We appreciate you. We appreciate Matt for being on the show. Just like as always, go back, check out the other shows. There's ones with Gabe and I. There's ones with a bunch of different guests. And if you could leave us a rating, a review, if you get value, share with a friend. That's all we ask. Hope you guys and your families are doing awesome and have a great day.